Hey guys, it's Desi Finds, and I am back here with another video. Today we are going to be recapping Gossip Girl, Season 1, Episode 2. Why am I acting like I don't know which episode I'm recapping? We will be recapping episode... We will be recapping... We will be recapping Season 2, Episode... We'll be recapping Season 1, Episode 2. Got it down. And Lord have mercy. Let's just get into it. Oh, real quick. Real quick. Damn, I just forgot what I was going to say. I did a little bit of decorating. Wait, just... Cause, cut, reverse, no, move forward. You know what. Okay, before we get into episode 2, let's recap a little bit of episode 1. A year ago, Nate, Blair's boyfriend, Serena. A year ago, Nate, who is Blair's boyfriend, Serena, who is Blair's best friend, slept together at the Shepherd wedding. They did the nasty. Nate cheated on Blair. Serena, after it all happened, ran away, went to boarding school in Connecticut, and didn't say goodbye to no one. Serena only came back to town, which is the Upper East Side, Manhattan, New York City, only came back into town for her little brother Eric, who is now in a mental health facility after trying to take his life. He's at the mental health facility called the Offshaw Center. Remember that. In episode 1, Blair is hurt by Serena because Serena left her high and dry. Especially after Serena left, Blair's life kind of crumbled because her mother and her dad divorced. Dad left her mom for a male model. I want to say Fabian. Well, we don't know his name yet. It was one of the hardest times of her life. Even though it was brief, Blair and Serena made up. But when Blair and Nate meet up later that night, Nate tells Blair the truth, that him and Serena got together and he cheated on Blair. Keep in mind, Serena has no idea that Nate told Blair about what happened between them. So Chuck, count your fucking days. Chuck tried to force himself on Serena and Jenny. Dan and Serena went on a date. It was ended abruptly when Jenny texted Dan that she needed help because this guy named Chuck was not leaving her alone. Dan and Serena end their date early. They go and rush over to the Kiss on the Lips party where Jenny, Chuck, Nate, and Blair are, and they go in search of Jenny. They find Jenny and Chuck on the rooftop. Dan and Serena barging onto the rooftop made Chuck let Jenny go, and Jenny ran to her brother. So, in response to Chuck forcing himself on Jenny, Dan rightfully punched the hell out of Chuck, left him with a nasty black eye. Rightfully. While Serena is at the party, Blair gives Serena the cold shoulder and a couple of dirty looks. And as Jenny, Dan, and Serena leave the party, Blair and Chuck look on, really pissed. Okay, end of recap. Spotted Lonely Boy in the palace courtyard waiting for Serena. Episode 2 takes place in a single day. It's Sunday. It's the day of Bart Bass's annual brunch. In case you don't know who Bart Bass is Chuck's father. Bart Bass is filthy rich. Bart owns multiple properties in New York City. He owns multiple hotels around the world. He helped build the New York skyline. And did I mention he's a billionaire? Did I mention he helped create the spawn of Satan? Chuck. Yes, I have beef with Chuck. I got beef. So we start the episode off with Dan checking on Jenny to see if she's okay, because Jenny almost got, because Jenny was almost raped. So yeah, he's checking on his sister. So here's the thing that irks me about Gossip Girl. This is not the last time Jenny will be dealing with sexual assault. There are multiple occasions where Jenny in particular deals with attempted rape and dealing with lewd behavior being exhibited towards her by usually older men. And all of that is just kind of brushed under the rug or minimized, or somehow she's shamed for it. And here's another thing. What Chuck did to Serena is never brought back up again. Like, not even mentioned. So, I guess they want us to forget about it. But I don't forget. But back to the recap. In this stage of the show, Jenny's innocence is really showing. She's not used to the scheming and gossiping ways of the upper class society of Manhattan. She really believes in the best of people, and she honestly believed that Chuck Bass was genuinely interested in her, but he wasn't. So Dan, wanting to protect his little sister, doesn't allow Jenny to blame herself for what Chuck did, because honestly she should not feel any shame or blame for it. And he honestly still wants to protect her because that is his little sister. So Jenny is a little sister at heart. So she's basically like, you're worried about me? You need to be worried about what Serena thinks about you after last night. So let's rewind this bitch for a second. After leaving the party, Dan, Jenny, Serena share a cab. Because Jenny and Dan are going to the same place, they obviously drop Serena off at home first, right? Serena is like, well, this is my stop. And Dan's bald-headed ass goes and says, well, good night. Jenny and me are sitting here like, did he really? First of all, it is dark, she's alone, and you're in New York City. Dan, get out the car. Jenny says, get your ass out the car and walk her to the door. So Dan, after going back and forth for a second, goes to get out the car, right? And Serena, not expecting him to follow, slams the door right in his face. The door hits Dan right on his bald-headed ass head. I'm sorry. No offense to bald people. I love your heads. The door hit Dan in his head. The taxi driver heard the door shut and was like, okay, zoom, zoom, and like just immediately is taking off. And Jenny is like, wait, hold up, don't, stop. And so I'm sorry, this is so funny. The taxi driver goes and slams his foot on the brake. This sends Daniel headfirst into the partition. Dan is seeing stars. Dan is just like, forget it, let's just go home. But keep in mind, Serena is outside seeing like the taxi jerk, like seeing the taxi go, then jerk to a stop. And so she's like wondering, what the hell is happening? So she walks up to the window to check if everything's all right. Dan gives her a wave and they drive off. And Serena waves back and was like, what the fuck was that? Dan, realizing he fucked up immensely, decides he needs to go out and beg Serena for a second chance. Jenny also decides that she has to go somewhere too, so they're like, let's just split a cab. And they're off. Serena is with Eric at the Offstroff Center, and she's talking to Eric about her night with Dan. Lord, she thinks Dan hates her. And she might be right. But you know who actually hates Serena? Blair. But Serena doesn't know that Nate told Blair. So Serena is puzzled on why Blair was being mean to her last night. So she decides to go over to her house with some croissants. So she and Blair can go out and eat croissants while hanging out on Fifth Avenue. Because there's a couple things you need to know about Blair Waldorf. 1, she is that bitch. 2, she's a movie buff. 3, she loves breakfast at Tiffany's. So while Serena is on her way to Blair's place, Dan is on his way to the palace. He just missed Serena, so he has to sit and wait. And I'm just saying, this is the time. This is a time period where cell phones just like called and text. There was no browsing the internet. So Dan was willing to wait for Serena for an unknown amount of time and just sit there in absolute boredom waiting for her to apologize. And all I am saying that if a man is waiting for me an ungodly amount of time to apologize to me, and he's waiting with no cell phone, he's just waiting in absolute boredom, and he's willing to wait hours upon hours for me, and he doesn't know when I'll be back. All I'm saying is that I'm a hopeless romantic, and he's spending the night. Rewind. Pretend I didn't say that. But you know who else is looking for Miss Vanderwoodson? If you said Chuck, you'd be wrong. But if you're saying Nate, you'd be right. See, Nate didn't mean a nary word of what he said to Blair. Because remember, he's only with Blair because of his dad's business. So Nate is waiting by the elevators for Serena, I'm guessing, to come out. But in actuality, Lily comes out the elevators. And Lily is just like, ooh, Nate Archibald, yes. Well, not yes. But she's all happy to see Nate. She tells Nate, Serena ain't here. You're more than welcome to wait for her. During this little chat, Lily basically says to Nate that she always believed Serena had a little crush on Nate, but, it would just be implausible to think that Nate and Serena will ever get together because Nate and Blair are such a perfect couple together. If the walls could talk. So when Lily goes to show Nate where he can sit and wait for Serena, she sees Dan. And she is not happy to see Dan. See, Lily has imaginary beef with Daniel. It's one-sided. Dan is all nice to her, saying, I hope the time since when I last saw you was pleasant. And Lily says, it was until now. So Nate's cheating ass goes and sits next to Daniel. I'm just like, each time I watch season 1, I'm like, Nate is lucky to date the women that he dates because they're just not psycho enough. They're not psycho enough. They're not. Well, at least Blair's not psycho enough. So Serena shows up to Blair's place with croissants. Blair ain't happy to see Serena. And Serena is there for less than 3 minutes, and Blair just keeps bopping Serena over the head. Like, she was not letting up on Serena. I almost started to feel bad, and then I remembered Serena's about to sit up in Blair's face and not tell her the truth about what she did with her best friend's boyfriend. Was just gonna, sit in her face and pretend and lie and deceive. So, these bops are justified. Blair lets Serena know that she knows what Serena and Nate did last year. And when I tell you Serena was flabbergasted, she was flabbergasted. So Serena is asking Blair, how does she know? And Blair tells her Nate told her. Serena just wants to keep playing in Blair's face and not tell her anything. And this show wants to make it out that Serena and Blair have this epic friendship, sisters from another mister. You know. They have this, Blair and Serena have this epic friendship with ups and downs, but they really have more downs than ups. They have more downs than the 2008 stock market. Am I, tell me, people who have watched, the show, am I wrong in my assessment that they just have more downs than they do ups? Because, Lord have mercy, hey, you know what, let me get back to it. Blair tells Serena, and I'll read this, word for word. She says, Blair tells Serena, I always knew you were a whore, but I never knew you were a liar too. And she warns Serena, stay away from her friends, stay away from her boyfriend, and stay away from her. Serena leaves quickly, but then a few minutes goes by and Jenny pops up at Blair's. So Blair knew when she saw Jenny that she was in for a treat. Blair knew what time Jenny was on. Jenny tried to lie and said she was there to give Blair back some calligraphy pens. But Blair calls that out. She's like, that is such a horrible lie. You're here because you want to know if Chuck has been talking about you. I know Blair was thinking like, these blondes try to play in my face all day, every day. But Blair says something that lets me know that this forcing himself on Serena and forcing himself on Jenny, it's not the first time that he has done this. Because Blair says, and I quote, Chuck likes to brag about his conquest, not his victims. And you can say, but what if he, like, it's Chuck Bass. What if he means victims, for his scheming ways? No, he likes to brag about his victims that way. We're talking about sexually. He likes to brag about his conquest, not his victims. Your days are fucking numbered. Like, when I heard that line and I finally processed it, I was like, I know you fucking lying. I know you fucking lying. But anyway, Lily and Rufus meet up. Lily doesn't want Dan around, but because Nate gives nice guy energy, and frankly because Nate is in the right tax bracket, she has no problem with him. But even though she doesn't know this, slept with Serena while he was with Blair. So I'm like, I'm just saying. At this moment, Nate, Dan. At this moment, Nate, Dan. Now I'm just saying, it's a bare minimum, but Nate done sucked down. That's all I'm saying. And then also, Serena's other friend, Chuck, tried to force himself on her. So I'm just saying, Dan, Chuck. Dan, Chuck. But you know what? She got Chuck, she got Nate. Worry about Dan. Worry about Dan. Worry about Dan. Chuck, Nate there? No. Worry about Dan. And I just want to drive it home. I'm telling you, if Dan did not have Rufus as his father, and if he was in the right tax bracket, a higher tax bracket, she would not have a problem with Dan. So Rufus is hearing Lily's concerns, and he's basically like, you don't need to worry about Dan. Maybe Dan is the type of guy your daughter needs. But also, Rufus got some questions, because they're seeing each other more in the span of 2 weeks than they have in the past 15 years. So Rufus is like thinking, and sometimes thinking is not he does not have the correct thought processes, is all I'm gonna say. He's thinking that Lily wants to start something back up with him. But Lily says, and I quote, yes, because the low income tax bracket, the bad V-neck t-shirts, the awful jokes are irresistible. I don't know why your wife left you. I don't know why your wife left you. Okay. 1-0. She's making a comeback. Well, Dan and Nate are waiting outside for Serena. And Dan is asking Nate, why is he waiting for Serena? And Nate is kind of just dodging that question. But guess who pops up from his $1,000 a night hole? If you said Chuck, you would be correct. Chuck. Chuck comes up lugging his black eye along with him. And Chuck sees Nate first, and he's like, what are you doing here? And Nate lies. Nate's lying ass goes and says, I'm waiting for you. Negro, you know his room. Chuck ain't an idiot. He may be, but he ain't an idiot. So you're telling him you know his room number, and you're telling him you're waiting for him? You're waiting for him? No one paid Nate for thinking. Not saying Nate is a dumb guy. No, I'm not saying. But he lacks common sense. He lacks it. And there's multiple points in the show where I can say he lacks common sense. He may have scored high on the SATs, but that common sense, not everyone has it. And he just was not born with the liar gene. Like, he could not lie to save his ass. Even though he was lying to Blair pretty well. Well, at least admitting the truth about him and Serena. Pretty well for, like, the last year. That's all I'm saying. But not even that well, because Blair kind of suspected something happened. So, not even that well. So, damn. Nate. Damn. So, Chuck sees Dan, and he automatically wants to fight. But I know this man cannot fight. If I can find the clip, I'll put it up here. But Dan finds out that Chuck's dad owns like the hotel. So Chuck says, and I will quote, "Unless you have business here, I have to ask you to wait outside with the trash." And Dan says, "The trash? I live in Brooklyn. I don't live in the Ozarks. No offense to the Ozarks." And I will say, the way they talk about Brooklyn in the show, you would think that showing them the mirror image of Brooklyn would break the Geneva Convention. Because the way they're talking about it is like, that's like the dirt. Like, it's Brooklyn. Brooklyn's expensive too. It like the gentrified areas, they're expensive. Even the non-gentrified areas are expensive. So this whole like Brooklyn slander, I need you to stop it. But it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. So Nate is holding Chuck back. But Chuck still wants to scrap. So as Nate is pulling away Chuck's water aerobics body, Chuck says, and I quote, "This isn't over." And Dan gives no fucks. And he says, and I quote, "Anytime that one black guy looks a little lonely." I'm just saying, the man can't throw a mean punch and keep his foot on someone's neck. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Back to the other Humphrey sibling. Blair says basically that she can stay and help her choose a dress that she's gonna wear to this brunch, right? And so Jenny is just sitting there watching Blair try on dresses. And Jenny is complimenting Blair. She's complimenting the dress. But Blair is not impressed by the compliments or the dress she tried on, which is a dress by her mother's fashion company. So Jenny sees that Blair has a Cabbage Patch Kid sitting on her bed, right? And she lets Blair know that her brother Dan had a Cabbage Patch Kid named Cedric. I love myself a plushie too. Even though Cabbage Patch Kid isn't a plushie, I'm not blaming the man. I'm not blaming So Blair hears Dan's name, dirt, in the future, whether it be on Dan or on Serena. She just sees an opportunity to be a little messy. She gives Jenny the dress that she just tried on, while noting that she's sure Jenny will find a way to repay her for the dress, meaning an intel or a favor. You shouldn't have taken that dress. It's like Eve taking the apple, or possibly it was Adam. But that's besides the point. So in the rare times on this show, Blair is actually being nice, her version of nice, without having anything to gain by being nice. And she tells Jenny,
"If you want to be part of this world, Jenny, people will talk. Eventually. You need to decide if all this is worth it."
So Dan is in the palace courtyard, and he's keeping himself busy while he's waiting for Serena. So Serena pops up, and Dan apologizes, and he asks Serena for another chance. So Serena grants him one, and they're about to go get some food, but Lily pops up and says, "No, you have the best brunch." So Serena ropes Dan into going to this brunch, saying that Dan's hungry too. So you're gonna let Dan starve too? She just didn't want to go alone. So Dan is like a fish out of water, and because Serena kind of virtually lost all her friends, she's feeling very uncomfortable too. So Serena and Dan are are in the Buffy line, and I say I'm maybe big backed. I was seeing some of their like food in one shot, and it made me hungry. That's all I'm gonna say. So they're in the line, and Nate somehow gets Serena's attention and nods to the door like he wants to go talk to her because, Nate didn't mean everything he said to Blair. Serena excuses herself to Dan and goes to meet Nate. So Serena starts going off on Nate, but the place they were talking wasn't private enough. So Nate gives Serena the key to Chuck's room to wait for him so they can speak there. And so she's gonna head up first and he's gonna follow close behind. Nate is about to make an excuse to Blair about why he's about to dip out for a couple minutes, but his father pulls him away. So Chuck comes waddling up and so Chuck goes walking up to Blair and he gives Blair his key to his room. You see where this is going. And says he gives Blair his key to his room so Blair can take Nate up there and, so Blair can give his virginity. So Blair can give her virginity to Nate in his room. And Chuck is such a creep. He says he's happy to have a part in her deflowering. Chuck apologizes. That's your man right there. That's your man. That's who you're writing for. So Blair pulls Nate away. And this has to be like one of I can't, I'm just gonna say it. She goes up and she tells him, she says, "What are you doing now? And would you rather be doing me?" Yeah, she said that. And so Nate's like, "Well, that sounds grand." But while he has Serena waiting, you know what? Oh my God. Nate. Common sense is not in your DNA. Oh my God. They go to the elevator, but Nate does not realize that they are on the floor Chuck's room is, and they are heading in the direction of Chuck's room. So he's not connecting the dots. So he doesn't realize to the absolute second that they're heading to Chuck's room. But remember who's waiting there? Serena. Serena looks at Blair. Blair looks at Serena. Blair finds out that Nate invited Serena up to Chuck's room, and he broke every single promise he made to her at that sushi place. He broke every single promise that he made when he was sitting up there pleading with minimal effort to Blair to take him back. God help me. The bar is in hell. And Serena is not very happy to learn that Nate promised that he would not talk to Serena anymore. But Serena, his girlfriend, found out he cheated on her with you. Not talking to you is the bare minimum she can ask for. Is the bare minimum. And you're offended? Okay, let me stop. So Serena throws some jabs at Blair. Once Blair explains what they were doing coming to Chuck's room, Blair goes on a speech on how sex is meaningful. And Serena rightfully clocks her. Like, yeah, sex is so meaningful, but you're about to lose your virginity in Chuck Bass's room. That's so romantic, Blair. That's so romantic. Like, she got her there. And Serena says real classy. So Blair hears that, and she took that shit personally. Blair hears that, and she says, two can play that game. She goes, and she's like, how about I go downstairs and tell Dan about what you're doing up here? So Blair runs out that door, and Serena is like is standing there like mouth open, turns to Nate and says, "Do you think she would really do that?" And Nate, the brain cells were working. Like looks at Serena like, "Are you for real? This is Blair we're talking about. This is Blair." Like Nate says, "This is Blair." So yeah, she's definitely gonna do it. They rush downstairs, and all the while they're running down the stairs, Serena is going off on Nate. She's talking about how she can't believe that Nate told Blair about what happened between them. And Nate is puzzled. He's like, "You expect me to keep the secret?" Serena, with her messed up logic, says yes, there's nothing wrong with keeping a secret if learning that secret will hurt somebody. Me and Nate are here. He says that's a hell of a way to he says that's a hell of a way to look at it. I'm with Nate. Like, that's some messed up logic right there. So while Serena is on this like side quest, Dan goes and looks for Serena because there ain't no reason it should be taking this long for her to come back. So he goes and looks for her, right? So he goes outside to the courtyard and he spots Lily outside talking to Bart Bass. And Lily is basically telling Bart, if you want me to take this relationship public, then you have to drop your side chicks. And Bart is trifling like his son. Bart says it takes time to do that. And Lily is like, they got nothing but time. They're 25. Okay. 2 times. And arguably 3 when she said that line to Dan. Arguably 3. So Lily sees Dan seeing them. And Dan is caught. And so he's like, you know what? The weather is nice out here, but I got to go. And so Lily chases after him. Lily says she does not appreciate Dan eavesdropping. And Dan says he was looking for Serena because he was. And Lily's like, well, I don't see Serena. And this is where I feel like Lily like got a point scored on her. Dan says, yeah, that's why I'm looking for her. Lord have mercy. The writing in the first season is unparalleled because I chuckled. But Dan lets Lily know she can chill. He's not going to say anything. He's going to mind his business. And she can go back to giving ultimatums to a guy who sounds like he don't give a damn. Bart sounds like he's in no rush to meet her requirements. No rush. So it's a race to see who can get to Dan first. And this is one of the few times people will be rushing to talk to Dan Humphrey. So just keep note of that. But Blair gets to him first, but Serena and Nate are close behind. Blair lets Dan know Serena was waiting in a hotel room for Nate. Nate is trying to salvage this situation, and he says, and I quote, "We were only meeting to talk about why we weren't talking anymore." And Blair and me are right here. That shit don't sound smarter the second time he says it. It don't sound smarter the second time he explains it. It does not, Nate. It does not. So Dan is trying to process everything. So he's like, so 1, why is Blair Waldorf so close to him? 2, Serena left him alone at a brunch he didn't really want to be at. He's only there for her to go talk to Nate in a hotel room. And 3, did this man just say that they were going to talk about why they weren't talking anymore? Okay. Dan connects the dots. So he says to Nate, is this why you were waiting for Serena this morning? And Chuck comes waddling over. So Chuck enters the chat and he comes waddling over and says, but I thought you were waiting for me. Chuck knew damn well Nate wasn't waiting for him. But anyway, we digress. So Blair's giving Serena the first dibs on telling Dan what happened between her and Nate. And so Serena's trying to add cushion to explaining that she slept with her best friend's boyfriend. But Chuck is like, you're doing too much talking. You slept with your best friend's boyfriend. And Blair just has to add, let me say, and she ran away and lied about it. She just had to like add salt onto the wound. And Blair says she had to let him know before he fell head over heels in love with Serena and he was left alone with his Cabbage Patch Kid. And so Dan's like, "You've been talking to my sister?" Then Chuck opens his gerbil mouth and says, "Oh yes, Jenny, we have some unfinished business." So Dan warns his trifling ass, well and good and clear, to stop talking about Jenny. But it's clear Chuck wants paws put on him, and he says, "Oh, Jenny, so little time but so many sluts," and he did not get to finish that sentence because Dan pushed him to West Hell, but his trip was delayed because Dan pushed him right into a waiter. And I know if I was a waiter, I know full well if I was a waiter, and I saw that a billionaire's son knocked me over, all I'm saying is that I'm getting myself an Oscar. That's all I'm saying. I'm seeing a billionaire's son knocked me over. I'm getting an Oscar. I'm getting that. I'm leaving. I'm going home with a couple extra zeros in my bank account. At least 5 extra zeros in my bank account. At least 5. I'm winning that Golden Globe. So everyone is looking, and Dan lets everyone know they can stop looking. Chuck is an ass, and he's leaving. So Serena chases after Dan. Dan is respectfully like, this isn't for me. Like, I thought you were different. Serena says she's trying to change, and that all she can do is try. And if Dan can't see that, then he's not who she thought he was, and that she guesses that both of them made mistakes. Well, Serena, Dan just found out that while he was looking for you, you were in a hotel room, waiting in a hotel room for a guy you slept with while he's your date at a function. Serena needs to realize, yes, you are trying to change, but that does not mean you can't be held responsible for your actions, for your current actions and for your past actions. And it does not negate the gravity of your past actions, because hearing like the person that you like, that you're starting to see, like cheated, and not only cheated, like slept with your best friend's boyfriend is a lot. That's a red flag. And it's not just that you slept with your best friend's boyfriend, which is, like I said, a huge red flag. But it's also that you got your mom to get Dan into this brunch, proceeded to leave, giving him a lie as your excuse, giving him a false excuse on why you were leaving, giving him a false excuse to cover what you were actually doing. Then you left Dan alone when he knows no one at this brunch. And he's not from the super wealthy elite of Manhattan. This is not his world. This is not his society. So he is a fish out of water. He really does not. He does not speak the Benjamins that they are speaking. Dan is not in your world, and you left him alone to go talk to some damn Nate. Frankly, Serena was being so inconsiderate to Dan here. Everything I just said is just red flags galore. So Dan has every reason, has every right to walk away at this point, because you don't have to tell him twice. He does not need to, any sane person will walk away. Any sane person. But it does not negate the fact that both Dan and Serena have feelings for each other. It's the perception that they had for one another has been broken and shattered, and they're just 16-year-olds. They don't have the emotional maturity to sit down and talk it out. So Serena watches Dan walk away, and then she turns herself to walk away. And then Dan stops, and he turns back to look at Serena's retreating figure. And so when it's clear that she's not going to look back at him, he walks away. And so Serena stops and just watches as Dan, leaves her field of vision. So Nate apologizes and asks Blair to move on while they're laying up. And I would like to say another hotel room, but I honestly believe it's Chuck's room that they're laying in. I honestly believe it's Chuck's bed that they're laying in. So yeah, they're laying there, and Nate asks to he apologizes and asks to move on, and Blair easily forgives him. Serena is left with no friends, no boy, and she's just all alone. So she decides to throw her whole damn phone in the trash. In a New York City trash can. She throws her whole entire Nokia in the trash can. Or it could have been a sidekick. Whatever. It was just early 2000s phone. Literally throws her whole ass phone in a public garbage can. You can't make this shit up. Okay, so that is it for episode 2. I'm right now, after I get off of this video, I'm going to go and record episode 4 and 5. So it should be up within the next 2 days. I'm not promising anything. And I hope you enjoyed this recap. And if me recapping the rest of Gossip Girl, recapping Interview with Vampire, and recapping the Peaky Blinders is interesting to you, then subscribe, please. Like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again in another video. And I'm just thankful that you even clicked on this video. So thank you. Bye.